to another video. I thought we would jump straight into it again. I am doing one of my pet portrait inkings. So this was actually a commission I had for Christmas, and it was part of two. It was this lovely French bulldog and also a pug as well, from someone who's actually bought a couple of pet portraits in the past, so a repeat customer, which is always very nice because they clearly like what I'm doing. But this, I thought I'd separate into two videos just because this dog is fully black and the other one is not, and I thought they both have different traits that I can talk about in separate videos. So as I have been doing for the last few inking videos, there'll be a link to the playlist at the end of the video in the last card. I've been kind of picking out something that I have noticed during these inkings to talk about and explain how I overcome or my creative process in doing them, so that if you are wanting to try doing this technique yourself, you can kind of get a little bit of insight and maybe try it out. So for this, because it is a dark black dog, I really have to pay attention to those darks and those highlights, and I think that just means sometimes you've got to adapt the way you're inking. One way you could do this, which is not the way I did, but this is something I have done in the past, is get the reference photo and just decrease the saturation and make it black and white, and then you can up and down the contrast of the piece so you can see those darks better, you can see those highlights better. However, I will just add a caveat onto that you do not want to over contrast where you are not seeing the texture of the fur. I always find if I'm not getting a good enough reference photo and it's a little bit blurred from the customer, I'm finding it very difficult to pick out that fur and finding it difficult to ink. I mean, that may differ for some of you, you might be okay with doing that, but for me, I find it very difficult to see what I'm supposed to be inking if it's a little bit blurry. So just be aware, if you are upping that contrast, you may lose a little bit of that detail, and just to use it more as an aid of where you should make it darker and where you should leave those lighter areas in. So in contrast to, say, some of the spaniels I've done in the past, there's no white on this dog, and so I've filled every little inch of the actual pet in with lines. Now, where I've left those lighter lines that look like white fur or highlights on that black fur, it's just me kind of leaving more room in between my lines. So I don't know whether this is still taught in school, but when I was doing my GCSEs and I was doing my art class, I know that we did a bit of cross-hatching, and the practice was the closer you cross-hatch your lines, the darker the patch will look, and then the further away the lines are from one another and the more blank space between them, the lighter the cross-hatching looks. So that's basically what I'm adopting here. I'm just leaving more white space in between the lines, or maybe even releasing the pressure I'm putting on the pen. These glass tip pens are very good for that. It might be more difficult with just like a felt nibbed fine liner, but these glass dip pens are really good for me to just ease off with the pressure of my hand as I'm inking, and it allows me to not only leave space between the lines but also lighten my stroke. And something I have mentioned in past videos, just be aware how much ink is on your pen. So I tend to, and it's a lot easier with a dark dog like this. So when I've dipped my pen for the first time in the ink, that obviously has lots of ink saved up in those grooves in the pen. If you're using a fountain pen, it'll be in that little well in the top of it. And so the ink pen is very saturated and is going to apply very dark and heavy ink lines. So when I have dipped my pen, I know to head for those darker areas that I've seen, say when I've upped the contrast on the image. However, when I realise that the ink is started to slowly run out in those little wells in my pen, I know to then head for the lighter areas. You can see I'm not flitting around the dog too much. It's just very subtle areas that I know having less ink on my pen will aid doing those areas, rather than having fresh ink on there and having too much ink and it's going to apply it too dark. So it's just knowing your pen as well. I suggest just practicing before you even head into a pet portrait. If you're not wanting to waste time and ruin something by not knowing how to do it, it's very good to practice that and see where you are at. Another thing to mention with this pet portrait is that the dog is a short-haired dog with lots of wrinkles, so you really need to pay attention to your line length and also the direction of your lines. So as you can see here on his muzzle, there's a fair amount of wrinkly bits that you get on bulldogs and pugs and all that sort of thing, and I've made sure to really pay attention to what direction that fur is going and curve it where it needs to be curved. You really need to look at the shapes of the fur, and the line length will also show that it's a short-haired dog and not a very long-haired dog. So it's just a lot of little things to just bear in mind, and I suggest studying a piece. Maybe even if you don't want to jump into a full pet portrait, find a pet image on a reference site like Pexels or Pixabay, choose little sections of it, cut out a square in a piece of paper, lay it over, say, the eye area or the ear or the nose, and just ink that little bit, paying attention really close to the length of the fur lines, the direction of the fur, and the opacity of the fur, so whether you need to leave large gaps in between the lines or whether you need to bring those lines a lot closer together and make sure that it's a bit more dense and dark. So I suggest practicing that way. It's something I've done in the past, and maybe if you want me to do a video on that, please let me know in the comments below, but I can show you how I would suggest practicing before you head into a final piece like this. But I think that's it for me. It's a quite short video, this. Like I say, I split the video in two just so that I could talk about two different things. So please let me know if you've enjoyed and whether you want me to do that tutorial onto how to practice doing pet inkings a little bit further. It's something I'm very happy to do, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the video. So I will see you in the next one.